So guys, to the surprise of no one, a Pokemon Presents has finally been announced for happening on Pokemon Day, which is going to be next week on February 27th. And this is, of course, going to be, I would think, one of the most interesting Pokemon Presents that we're going to see, I think, in a while, because there's really so many possibilities, different things that people have been discussing about, and there's a lot to kind of talk about for what could happen. And that's why we're going to be doing a predictions video, but I don't really want to just be here alone and talking with you guys about like what I feel like could happen. So I invited somebody who I'm sure you guys all know. We've got Ruffled Rowlet here. What's up, man?
How's it going? How's it going? Thank you for having me on, man.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, it's been a while since we've kind of talked in a video, and I mean, I think the last time we did was for a Pokemon Presents too, but it's always fun talking with you.
True, true. Well, dude, I'm always glad to be on here and talking about Pokemon with you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know. I just feel like predictions videos are more fun with like other people when you got like more thoughts and things to bounce off of and discuss.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. I guess we can start with just kind of like initial, I guess thoughts. Like, how do you feel about this Pokemon Presents? Are you like worried about it going into it? Are you excited? Are you super hyped? What are your thoughts?
So it depends on like which side of me we're talking about. Like if we're talking about the YouTuber side of me, I'm a bit worried, not gonna lie,
Mm.
in terms of what to expect. On the other hand, the like fan in me, the Pokemon like fan in me, kind of is screaming with like joy that maybe there will not be a new game announced, because that's kind of the biggest thing about this presents is like everybody, and like you've probably seen it and we're gonna probably talk about it a bit, but like there's a lot about black and white, some stuff about Johto. It's a lot of
Hmm.
like remake talk, or like revisiting old regions in one way or another. It's a lot of talks about that kind of stuff. And the thing with that is it's cool and all, but like at the same time, there's also this like feeling that I've been having myself, which is maybe we're not even going to get a new game announced. Like there is a chance that might not even be the case. But that's more like the pessimistic side of me thinking that way. But
Hmm.
currently, the feeling on this Presents is excited as always. I mean, you know me, dude. When it comes to Pokemon Presents, I'm always
Yeah,
going
it's always
wild about
Pokemon
it.
in the end still.
Yeah, exactly. So no
Yeah.
matter what, like at the end of the day, it is a Pokemon Presents. So even if we don't get a big new game announced, we will get games announced. Like we will get new game announcements. There's no question about that. Like there's
Hmm.
100% guaranteed we'll get a new game announced. Maybe not a mainline one, like I said, but there might be always the chance of spin-off games. But going into this presents, I'm excited. Like there's so many possibilities, and this time
Hmm.
around, like with this specific game, with this specific present, it's a bit different than we've had. Like
Exactly.
I would say
Yeah.
the last time around, right? Because like if we think about like the last presents from last year, I think everybody and their mother pretty much expected that it was going to be a DLC announcement, right?
Yep.
Like everybody
Yep.
went in like, oh yeah, it's going to be DLC announcement. It's going to be
Hmm.
straightforward. Like I don't think anybody was expecting to see like a Johto remake or Unova games, or
Hmm.
or anything else like
Exactly.
that.
Yeah.
Like nobody went in with that expectation. Everybody
Yep.
was like, oh, it's DLC guaranteed. And I think like we kind of have that mentality, and we're going to always have that mentality whenever a new generation comes out, that the year following that is always going to be DLC going forward.
Yep.
However, now we're kind of back in that position we were when BDSP was announced, because when BDSP came out, or when we got the announcement during that Pokemon Day back in like what 2021, I want to say. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
when we had that one, that was like insane that they revealed two mainline games. Like that was, I think, the biggest thing we've had in Pokemon in forever.
Yeah, and I
Like in
think like
terms of
that's
announcements.
like the biggest thing right now is like the whole elephant in the
Yeah,
room right now is about like what the next like mainline Pokemon game is going to be, because I feel like for a while it's always been kind of like you can kind of have a good prediction in terms of what to expect. And I think even like during what you said with like the 2021 presents, I think we were still predicting like we were gonna get Sinnoh remakes. Like I think that's what everybody
yes,
thought.
yes,
So like it
yeah,
wasn't like, I mean, no one predicted Legends Arceus, but we still thought like it
no,
was probably gonna be some type of Sinnoh game. Like it's time for Sinnoh remakes. It just makes sense.
yeah,
But that's the thing
100%.
about this presents is that like we are kind of in a situation which is so unique, and that's the part that makes me kind of excited. Is like right now it's too early for generation 10. We're not going to be moving to a new generation. At the same time, remakes usually have a good amount of time between them. Like even from like ORAS to BDSP, it was like a good 6 or 7 years until we got that. So it seems kind of hard to think that they would just go like immediately to like a black and white remake just 3 years after BDSP. So it's like, what could they possibly do? There's so many different like doors that are open, and I think that's the kind of interesting point that we have to discuss here. So like, do you have like your most wanted? I guess I would say we can start off with like, just what would you personally want if you didn't have to talk about what would realistically happen?
Okay, so if I'm talking like a wish list of what I would
Mm-hmm.
want to see announced, I would say there's two things I really want to see, which is some form of Johto game. Doesn't really matter what kind of Johto game. I just want to see Johto. Like I would be fine with a standard remake of it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not to the level of BDSP, but like
Yeah, yeah.
like something like even like Let's Go level of remake, I would be fine with, and that's mostly just because like to me, I just want to see Johto piffed up to that like 3D
Yeah,
graphics
on like a home
version that we had.
console.
Exactly,
Yeah.
because we haven't had that. Like, I mean, you like that's the thing with Pokemon, which is lovely, is that you can always go back and play the old games, right? Like, you can always do that.
Mm-hmm.
But then, like, there's always this feeling of like a little bit of a disconnect where you're like, damn, like I wish I could see this, but like today with like the capabilities of today's like consoles and graphics and everything that can be done. Like, imagine if I could like actually see the burnt tower and
Yeah.
face off against Lugia and whatever, like all those things is what makes me like kind of feel like I want to see like a basic Johto remake, but like in 3D and kind of that kind of stuff, and of course with extra additions like similar to like something like Oras. But of course that's me wishfully thinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, like another thing I wouldn't be against is just anything Johto related, like a Legends game. Now again, Legends realistically isn't really going to happen ever again. I don't think Legends as a series is even a series. I think it was a one-off thing, just like Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee was. It was a one-off thing they tried, an experimental game of sorts, right?
I do think personally Legends could get another game, but not it won't be announced in this present is my prediction.
That's fair.
Mainly because I think Legends, I forget like if they told us exactly how long, but I think they said it was like 2 or 3 years it took them to make, right? I'm pretty sure there
Yeah,
was like an interview where they admitted like how long it took for them to make, and my guess is
yeah.
just like if it hasn't been that much amount of time since Legends came out. It only came out 2 years ago, so it
Hmm.
wouldn't be enough time. Because the thing is, like when Legends came out, they didn't know like what the reaction was going to be from fans. Like they didn't
True,
know
true, true,
if
true, true.
people were going to like it or not. Obviously, everybody loved it, as for the most part, everybody's always talking about how amazing it is. I still consider it
Hmm.
to be my favorite Pokemon game on the Switch. I think like out
Yep.
of Scarlet and Violet and Sword and Shield and Let's Go, it's still my favorite. So
Same.
I think for sure that like now they have seen that people like loved it, that they'd probably be like, okay, you know what, maybe we could make another Legends game. I just don't think they would have it ready in 2 years and have it in this presents. So that's
Yep.
my way of thinking about it. But I think in the
That,
future, maybe on the next system or something, I definitely don't think that Legends, like we can rule it out as never happening again.
but like keep in mind, like as much as I wanna wishfully think that Legends might return, and it could, of course. Like there's nothing there that says that it can't happen again, right? Or that we won't see it happen again, or
Yeah.
whatever. But like, I feel like we need to kind of like separate Legends and Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee to this like experimental video game section, right, on the
Yeah, for
side,
sure.
away
Yeah.
from like the all the mainline stuff that we're used to, like new gen, third
Hmm.
version,
Yeah.
remakes, right? That like those are the three standards, those are the three pillars of Pokemon, right? Is new generations, third versions, and then the remakes. Of course, third versions are now replaced with DLC, but whatever. But like Legends, to me, as much as I want to see another one of it, another version of it, it like technically sold less than BDSP, sure, which
Yeah.
is because it was a singular version and it was released in January, which is a
Hmm.
very weird time to release a
It's
game
like
because people
after
would already.
Christmas when people have spent all their
Exactly.
money and stuff. Yeah.
Exactly, right? So it's a really bad timing to release it, but it still sold 15 million copies. Like that is
It
actually
wasn't like a
incredible.
drastic like difference either between BDSP. It's only by
No,
like a
no.
million or so, I think, that like
Yeah,
it's
there's
lower.
like actually it's even less. I think it's about like
Couple hundred thousand.
250,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
250,000
So it's
difference
not like it's
between
not
the
like
two.
BDSP sold way more than like Legends and it
No,
was a
no.
failure or anything like that. So
Exactly, yeah.
um
So, but yeah, that's kind of like the thing with like Legends though. For me, it's like it wasn't a bad performing game, but like the chance, like you said, of them announcing it now because it's been such a it's only been like 2 years since like the last one came out. But at the
exactly,
same
yeah.
time though, at the same time they could announce it and also release it because remember Legends Arceus when it was announced came out exactly like almost a year later, right? Exactly like 11 to 12 months later because they
Yeah.
announced it in February and then it released in the next year in
Yeah,
January. So
almost
there
like
was
11 months, or I think it was 11
exactly
months
yeah,
after. Yeah. So
yeah, exactly. So they had like an extra 11 months to still like work on it or do whatever else and like include it in a
yeah.
day one patch, whatever. Like they had enough time to still work on it and do stuff with it. And keep in mind the difference between Legends then and Legends now is that they have the base for it, right? Like you
Exactly,
got to
yeah.
remember, like the idea of Legends had to kind of be concocted up in the heat of the moment for them. In like the process of making the game, they had to kind of invent all these things. What they can do now is use that, like, the basis of that.
Blueprint,
It's
yeah.
not, exactly, yeah. They use that, like, the framework they've already kind of like set up, and they can reuse that. However, I just don't think we're going to see something with the monocle or the name Legends, at least not now. As much as I want it, like, it is like I said, wish list wise, that's what I want. That's
Yeah,
like
for sure. Yeah,
my
same. Me
wish
too.
list.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Okay. I think in terms of main series games, really there's only two big sides that I've seen people talking
yeah,
with. I think it would be really hilarious if it's like both of us are wrong and it's just something completely different that we see next week instead. But really, it's like the two sides that I see are it's either going to be something Johto related or it's going to be something Unova related. And it's
yeah,
like I think the two sides. I mean, both of these games, both Unova and Johto, have been the most like distant apart in terms of like how long it's been since we've revisited those regions. I think
exactly.
Unova, it was 2012. I think was when Black and White 2 came out. So it's been like 12 years since then. And then Johto was even further along. It was like 2009 when like Heart Gold and Soul Silver came out. So
Yeah,
it's been like
yeah.
14 years, I think, or 15 years since then. So it's been a really long time since both of these games. And I think there's reasons for people to believe both of them are gonna like both of these have a possibility of happening. So I'm sure, like, obviously we talk about a lot of the rumors and stuff that are going on with like Riddler Coup and stuff. So I'm sure
Yep.
you've seen like the rumors about that there's going to be some type of potentially like futuristic like Unova game, and that's apparently like one of the sides that some people think. That's honestly the
Yeah.
one I kind of think makes a little bit more sense in my opinion. I feel like
Hmm.
especially after Indigo Disc showed a lot of like love to Unova and a lot of that
Yep.
type of stuff, it really kind of made it seem like to me that maybe they could potentially be setting up some stuff inside of Unova or like in like the Indigo Disc with Unova and then building up towards some type of Unova game that they could be announcing instead, which of course it wouldn't be a remake. It wouldn't be like Black and White just like remade for the Switch, but it would be like
Hmm.
some different type of experience just going through the Unova region. And I don't know if you remember, but like Riddler Coup even said something about like how like one of the characters in the Indigo Disc like holds a key to the next game, and like we're gonna know when
Yeah.
we find out what the next game is. So that's my
Yeah.
prediction. But what do you have to say about it? What do you think like your guess is for like
Oh,
what could be happening?
jeez. Okay, so on a realistic scale, like on a realistic side of things, right? Like what I
Mm-hmm.
actually think might happen. Um, so I try to look at it from the perspective of like what significance does each year hold for Pokemon, right? And what like can we learn from the past and apply to the current time, right? So if we look at what has Pokemon done in the past around this time frame, well, usually this would be a gap year, right?
Yeah.
This would be the time frame where either like they would do a remake game or they would take a gap year. And that's what they did in the past, right? Like if we
Mm-hmm.
go back in time and we let's say let's start from like generation 3 because that's when we started getting actual Pokemon remakes and that's kind of where this pattern began. Which is we had Gen 3, we had the remakes of Fire Red Leaf Green, and then we had Emerald after that, right? So we had three things in a row: Ruby, Sapphire, Fire Red Leaf Green, and then Emerald after that.
Mm-hmm.
Then in Diamond and Pearl, and then following Diamond and Pearl is where we kind of got this, formula of, every other generation we have a remake to be made. And I think
Yep.
the reason that they started doing it that way was to give each new generation enough time and each like remake like that needs to come enough time to actually kind of cement itself, right? Because imagine
Yeah.
if they did remakes every single new generation, like if they did
Yeah. No. No.
like
It
if they
would be
genuinely
way
did
too
that.
much. Yeah.
Yeah, because like, and this is like where I'm kind of like, where people like are going crazy about black and white remakes, and the reason I don't think it's gonna be black and white remakes is because, and I know it's gonna sound stupid to say this, and it's gonna sound like it's gonna piss people off, but I feel like it's too early. Like I know it sounds weird to
Yeah,
say that,
I mean
but it
that
just
that's
feels
that's
too
what I
early.
always said too. Is like it just
Yep.
doesn't because like even like if we take a look at the first remake, which was Fire Red and Leaf Green, that was
Yeah.
2004, I think, right? And
I
then
think 2000, yeah, 2005 actually. I think it could have been
oh okay, I
2005.
thought
I
I
could be
thought
wrong
five
though.
was Emerald. I thought, but either way, it was
No,
one of
because they came
those.
out the same year, by the way. They came out the exact same
Oh
year.
yeah,
Emerald
yeah.
and
Okay,
Fire
that's
Red came
true.
same
Yeah,
year.
yeah. So it could be like it was that, and then we had Heart Gold and Soul Silver, which came out 5 years after that in 2009, and then we
Yep.
had Oras came out another 5 years after that in 2014. So then after that, we had to wait I think 7 years until 2021 to get like Pokemon BDSP. So it's always been like a
Yep.
good 5 to 7 years since we've seen remakes, which is why it just seems so hard to
Yep.
believe that they would do a remake just 3 years after the last one. Like it's like almost
Exactly.
like half the amount of time, which is why I always say, like, even every time I've said like it's a Unova related thing, that's my prediction. I'm not talking about
Hmm.
like it would be a literal remake of Black and White. I
No,
think
no.
it would be like a new experience, but just like familiar in the Unova region. But it would still be maybe along the lines of like a different type of Gen 9 kind of experience, but just in the Unova region. Because that seemed like to me what kind of Riddler Coup was teasing at, like some type of stuff that would still go into like the Paradox Pokemon, and we could learn more about that inside of the Unova region. That's kind of the way I thought about it, but it's really kind of open. We really have no idea what they could possibly be doing.
So see, that's the thing, right? Like, that's where I'm more like pushing towards as well with my mind, is that like it would be something along the lines of an experimental game,
Yep.
because a basic remake just it's not time for it yet. Like it literally,
Exactly.
like
Yeah.
again, like I know a lot of people use the argument that, oh, next year is like I think next year is the anniversary of Black and White, so then it would make sense to do it then or whatever. And
Wait,
like they're
next year is?
also, I
Oh.
think that's what they said, or I think it's the year after that. I'm not exactly sure.
Well, I know in
But like,
2026 it's the 30th anniversary of Pokemon.
yeah, exactly. So that's the thing. A lot of people are saying like, oh, we're not going to get anything next year, which actually I've been kind of feeling that as well. Like, oh, maybe we won't get anything next year. But then again, I'm against the idea that, oh, they would literally delay a whole year's worth of releases. Because remember, Pokemon is a big boy when it comes to for Nintendo, the Pokemon Company, creatures, Game Freak. Like Pokemon is the big boy. Okay, Pokemon's the
Hmm.
one that makes them the most amount of money. It
Yeah,
will
for
be
sure.
very bad for them to not have something for 2025, right? Especially if we're gonna have a new Switch and everything, and like leading into that
Hmm.
year.
So,
If you know, like if we don't have an actual new generation next year, that's
yeah.
gonna be like, you know, because it's not just that we have 1 year without a game. That's almost 2 years without an actual release. Because you got to keep in
Hmm.
mind, right? Like you're aware of this, Aero, right? Like once they get, like, let's say next year they do the Pokemon Presents, and they only announce like one new spin-off game or something, right? Or two new spin-off games,
Yeah.
and that's it for the rest of the year. That means that for all of 2025, and then also pretty much all of 2020, 2026 until November, we will not
Yeah.
have an actual Pokemon game, right?
You're right.
Which
Yeah.
would be insane. That would be
Well,
really bad from
I do
like an
wanna bring up
investor's
the
time.
topic. I do want to bring up the topic
Yeah.
since you talked about a new generation, because Generation
Hmm.
10 is going to be a big deal for Pokemon. It's going to be the 10th
True. Very true.
generation. It's going to be
Yes.
huge for Pokemon. It's going to be crazy. So I think
100%.
realistically, going off of just like what we have seen, they have followed a very, very strict rule of like a new generation has to come every 3 years. And it's been like this ever
Yes.
since Pokemon has gone to having worldwide releases, where
Yes.
2016 or 2013 we had X and Y, then 2016 we had Sun and Moon, 2019 we had Sword and Shield, 2022 we had Scarlet and Violet. So following
Exactly.
this would put the next generation next year, 3 years after 2022, would be next year in 2025. However, a lot of people, including myself personally, would love to see, I think, a new generation line up with the anniversary of Pokemon, like what they did in 2016. Actually, that was the
Yeah.
20th anniversary of Pokemon, and they had like the big
Yeah.
celebration, like direct, and then they had the Sun and
Hmm.
Moon announcement. But what do you think? Do you think that Pokemon is going to care about having their anniversary and having like a new gen there, or do you think they're just going to say, you know what, we're having it next year still anyway?
They do have an odd obsession with doing that. They do have an odd obsession. The only difference though is that because what you're referring to is the time frame of 2015, 2016, where in 2015 we had no release, right?
Yeah, it was a gap year.
And
People
yeah,
thought there was going
exactly.
to be Pokemon Z that year, and we got nothing.
Yeah, and see that's the thing though. Like that year is where everything was a little bit kind of weird, the same way things are weird right now, right? Because like you would think like because like that's the thing. That time around, that year was not supposed to be the new generation year, right? That was like
Yeah,
no, that was not
yeah,
like that was like the year where it was either supposed to be like like you said Pokemon Z, or just like kind of a filler game. You know what I mean?
hmm,
Like something to fill the time frame. But they didn't have anything. It was just an empty year. And now Pokemon, the difference now versus then is that we've now been running on a constant year after year release since
yeah. They
2016.
haven't taken
They,
any breaks.
they have taken no breaks, right? Now, of course, you can count the DLCs as not being new games, sure.
Yeah,
But
but
at
it's
the
still
same time,
content.
they still count. They're basically the third version games, right?
Yeah,
They do the same thing as the third versions do, to a lesser extent, right? Like to a not as good extent as like something like Platinum or Emerald, but they still serve that same purpose. They're the third version games that are releasing every single, generation. That's basically the same purpose they serve. And as such, those still exist. Like those are still there. Those are still being filled in. But the difference is we have the DLC, but then what's that third thing? Well, that's usually a remake or nothing, right? But now that's been changed upside down, because what we had for, let's say, since 2016, we had Sun and Moon, right? That's the start of a new generation. Following up that, we had the third version game, right? Which was Ultra Sun and Moon, right? That was the definitive, the DLC-esque version of Sun and Moon, which was the second one in 2017. In 2018, however, you would have expected normally, logically there, it would have been a gap year, right? Nothing would have released. Or we would have expected some kind of remake, which we kind of did get, but it didn't follow like the whole like every other generation remake thing. It was a whole new thing, which was Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. That was a whole new like, hey, this is a Hail Mary, this is an experimental game, let's fucking try it. And that's where everything's changed for me. That's like because they did that, because Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee existed. I don't think we're gonna have a gap year next year. There is a chance they might skip the generation. They might skip and not do the new gen next year. But
I mean, some people also think that
something.
it could be like they could do the new gen still next year in 2025, and then like for the anniversary, there's going to be some super celebratory like anniversary DLC for Gen 10 in 2026.
True. They could do that.
Which I personally like. I don't know. The reason I'm saying why I want it in 2026 is because I really want Gen 10 to just be the one generation that really like makes everybody shut up in terms of how good it actually is. Like, you know, like we've heard so many different things about Pokemon games on the Switch for years now, about like how the graphics aren't that good, like, you know, they should have this, and like how is there no voice acting and all. Like I feel like if they took the time to really have that extra year to try to make the anniversary game with a brand new generation to really like amaze people on a new system, I feel like it would be amazing. But I don't know if they're really going to care about all of that.
Well, they do. I don't think they would have done it with the Sun and Moon thing, but except the Sun and Moon thing kind of lined up more perfectly, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I think it was
better
like
thing. Yeah, like I think the better thing to do is kind of look at like, did they do that prior to Sun and Moon? Did they ever like care about like for example, the 15th anniversary of Pokemon? Like what was announced during the 15th anniversary, as an example? Like let's see, the 15th anniversary of Pokemon, like because I can't remember back that, like, you know, that far back what actually happened.
I mean,
like,
if you tell me what year that was, I might be able to remember.
So the 15th, so the 25th anniversary was 2021, for example, right? That's a pretty big one too. Like the 25th anniversary, it's pretty large still. That was in 2021. So for the 25th anniversary, they announced, if I'm not mistaken now, BDSP and Legends Arceus, right? That's a pretty big thing to announce too. Exactly, two really big games. That's one example, right? And I remember with like the 25th anniversary, we had the whole like Pokemon Celebrations card set, which was massive. People loved it. Like that was huge. Of course, for the 20th anniversary, that was, I guess, Sun and Moon. And then I'm trying to see like how far you can go back here, because it's kind of hard to find when that was. Like kind of having a struggle finding exactly when that was. Because I mean, it's kind of hard to do the math off the top of my head. But here we go. So Pokemon, the 15th anniversary was in 2012. Okay, so the 15th anniversary of Pokemon was in 2012. Now, if I remember correctly, didn't we have Black and White 2 in 2012? Like,
yeah, I think that's all we got. Well, I don't remember like there
that's.
Being, like,
I think that's it, right? So.
And that was still before we had like worldwide releases and everything, so they probably didn't have like a huge,
Yeah, so they of course back then also they didn't do all this like Twitter promotion and all these things like presents and directs and everything. That wasn't like a thing yet, but nonetheless, it's just to prove the point that like, sure, the 30th anniversary will be big, but like even for the 25th and etc., like the 20th, even for the 20th anniversary, if you really think about it, it was just a new generation announcement. Every other like, time they've had a big celebration for like, oh, this is a big anniversary, it hasn't been like always like, necessarily the massivest of thing. Like, again, we just said it. The 15th anniversary, what was it even? Like for the 15th anniversary, it was just
Black and White 2,
Yeah, just Black and White 2. I mean, sure, that's cool and all, but it's not like, that's the equivalent of getting DLC, Like, it's like, it's not that massive. And then for the 20th anniversary, sure, that's probably the biggest one. That's the only one we can look at where we can be like, they did it this one time. but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to do it again. And like you said yourself, they could do something big instead for the 30th anniversary, which is far more like,
I just feel like it's because also it's generation 10,
Yeah.
it's like a big number
True,
for them.
it is a
Double
big one.
digits.
Yes, it is a big one. But like, I wonder if they're that like sentimental over the idea of like matching up the 10th generation with the 30th anniversary. Like, I don't know if they're like that specific about it. Like, maybe
they might just
like
not care.
that.
Yeah, it might just be like a still like a business to them, and just 3 years every year, 2025 new gen, we're just doing that.
Yeah, because
So,
you got to think about it, right? Like, we've run the course now. Like, after this year, that's the end of this generation. Like, naturally, it's the conclusion of it.
Because I think whatever game that we get like announced next week, you're definitely thinking that's going to be the last game of Gen 9.
Yes, 100.
If it's a mainline game, at least.
Like, I for the longest time, I thought it was going to be 2 games, by the way. Like, because I thought, hey, I think they're going to end this off with a Johto game and a Unova type game.
Which maybe could happen, but I don't know how I would feel about it.
It could happen, yeah. I don't know either how I would feel about it, but I've been thinking like, oh, that could be the
like
way
they could pull like a BDSP and like Legends type of thing.
Stuff.
Exactly. Where like,
yeah.
you get like one holiday this year and then one early next year before like Pokemon Day or something, I guess. Do you still think that the Pokemon game that we're going to see next week is going to be the last Pokemon game for this current Switch?
Yes.
Okay.
I think
because
so.
that makes sense
I
with
think
me
so.
also.
Because I think it would be really weird for them. And that's actually the Switch 2 is actually one of the reasons I feel like they might delay like next year's like generation. Unless
did you
like
hear about the
Switch,
Switch 2 getting delayed? Because that was like another whole thing. That happened too.
Yes. I've heard of that too, and that's kind of what makes me a little bit concerned for a new gen not coming out next year. Because all I can think to myself is, they need to the Switch needs to already be out by the time they announce it. You know what I mean?
Well, the thing that's interesting about the Switch 2 delay was actually the reasoning that people were giving was because Nintendo wanted to have better games for their like launch year. And that makes me kind of think like, can you imagine like if the Switch 2 does come out like next year now and they decide to have like a brand new Pokemon generation during the holiday? Like that would be kind of insane to launch a new system alongside that.
True, 100%. Like, if they had Pokemon as a launch title, it's
or just even in the same year, like just the launch year, like knowing that holiday you're gonna get a new generation on a new system, that's gonna sell so many systems off shelves. Like people are gonna be going crazy.
Oh yeah, no, not even dude. It's not even a question. It's like not even a question. It's instantly like that's because that's the thing. Pokemon, you gotta remember,
is a system seller.
It is literally one of the best selling things. And yes, it is a system seller. Like people would legitimately just buy a Nintendo DS, for example, back in the day, just to have Pokemon. Like they wouldn't have it for anything else. Like it's not like they were playing Nintendogs.
I mean, there's people like that even with the Switch. There's people like I know genuinely people in real life I know who only bought a Switch just to play Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet and Legends. Like I know they have no other games on their Switch, which is I always find it crazy. I'm like, how do you not have like Smash Bros or any other game? But they're just like, bro, I just care about Pokemon. I'm like, that's crazy, but there are people like that exist. So.
Oh yeah, dude, not strange at all. Like it's totally natural that that's the case because at the end of the day, like people are attached more so to a franchise than they are to like to the console itself and anything like that. They don't like like it's easier to be attached to one thing than several different things. And the thing is like the way I see it like right now with Pokemon and the next generation and like with the Switch and everything is that first of all we need that new Switch announced or whatever it's going to be called. I don't know if it's going to still even have the monocle of Switch as its naming scheme.
I think most people think it will still, but it was supposed to be announced like next month. That was what the rumor was saying, but then apparently the delay like made it like now it's apparently going to be announced in the summer and stuff, so I don't know what's going on with all of that, but so I mean, I think we're all in the same boat that the whatever Pokemon game that we get announced next week is going to be the final like main series game for this Switch, and then the next thing will probably be for the Switch 2 only.
Yes, that's definitely the way I view it. 100%.
Okay, all right.
Like this is the final one, and
because that makes sense to me.
We're moving on to the next console.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Okay, I think the next thing we can talk about, because we already kind of talked a lot about like the main series game, and that's definitely the big thing. But I also think it's also possible. How would you feel if next week we don't get any main series game at all announced, and we get instead maybe some type of spin-off title or something else? Because I think a lot of people have also just been asking for something like a brand new mystery dungeon or something like that. So what would your thoughts be on if we got something like that, or do you have anything that you would personally like to see in terms of spin-offs if we had the chance?
Like okay, so in terms of spin-offs, when I think to myself, like when was the last time we actually, like, let's say Mystery Dungeon, right? I don't think we're gonna see Mystery Dungeon this year. I have a more of a feeling it's gonna be next year that we get Mystery Dungeon, because those
Mm,
games have been releasing about a 5 year distance between each of them, right? It's about 5 years between each Mystery Dungeon game.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
because
because
if
I
we
think
look
the
back at the
last one
last
was like
one
we had like
in
2015. There
2020.
was one on the 3DS, and then we
Yes,
had that
yeah.
remake that came out in 2020. So yeah, 5 year
Yes, yeah.
difference.
So that's where I'm thinking that if we're talking about Mystery Dungeon, I don't think we're going to see it until next year, which
I
is
could
why
see
I'm
that.
also
Yeah,
feeling like next year might be the year where we don't get anything at all, actually. So they'll just kind of fill that gap of next year with just Mystery Dungeon and whatever other spin-offs they have in their, in their
that's
arsenal.
possible. Yeah.
There's a possibility for that. However, on the other hand, in terms of what I'm expecting this year, I don't know if I'm expecting a mystery dungeon. I would love for it. Like, of course, from a wish list point of view, I'd love another mystery dungeon game, man. It would be
It's
great, and
been a
just
while
one
because I
that
think they
actually.
haven't even used like any of the Gen 7 Pokemon. I don't think
No,
even,
no,
right?
dude. I mean, they haven't touched anything since like what?
The last like 2 or 3 generations. So they had like all
Yeah,
of Sword
yeah,
and Shield's decks, all of like Scarlet and Violet's decks to mess around
yep,
with. Like there's so
yep.
many new Pokemon that they could have an amazing new game with. So
Oh yeah.
that's crazy.
I
But
think
do
the
you have any other
wildest
types
thing.
of other spin-offs that
So
you care
like,
about?
so there's like three things I have in mind, right? Like the wildest things I could imagine is like a new Rangers game, like
Yeah.
maybe Rangers returning. And the only reason I even mention Rangers and even bring it up, because it is at the end of the day one of those franchises that didn't sell the best. If we're gonna be realistic here,
Yeah.
it wasn't really a bestseller, but it's like a very like realistically easy game for them to make. It's not as taxing as making a full mainline Pokemon game, which requires hundreds of Pokemon, hundreds of move animations,
Are
and
those are
so
those
much.
games also made by like the main Pokemon company, or is that like
No,
some
no,
other developer?
they're made by other studios. Like I think
Okay.
every spin-off game is made by other studios. Uh, I
Okay, yeah,
think
that
pretty
makes
much, yeah. I
sense.
think I think every single one of them is made by a different studio.
All
But like
right,
the thing
yeah.
with Rangers it was made by HAL Laboratories and Creatures Inc. Right, so Creatures
Okay,
is
yeah.
just involved with all the 3D work, and stuff like that. But the thing with like the Rangers games is that I have a feeling mostly because of the fact that we saw Pokemon Snap like getting a new game a few
Yeah,
years
that
back.
was crazy when
Like,
that got announced. It was just out of
yeah,
nowhere.
because that's the thing, right? That's exactly the feeling, right? It came out of nowhere. It was such a surprise. Like
And
nobody
everybody
expected
asked
Snap to
for it
come back.
so long. Everybody always said like, bring back Pokemon Snap. Well, let's have a new Pokemon Snap. And then they actually did it, and we were like, oh my god, that's crazy.
Yep. So
So
see,
yeah.
that's where I'm feeling like maybe it's time for Rangers to return. Maybe like they should involve it in some form or shape. But then also I'm thinking to myself like, is it going to be like something that they're going to be willing to even bother revisiting? Because like Rangers fit with its time frame, right? Because that was like during Gen 4 and everything. Like, would
Yeah.
they be willing to bring it back? Like, would they have a reason to bring it back or even care for it?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I just don't see it like being likely. And I think like the wildest one for me would be like some form of remake or re-release of Colosseum and
Oh, that
XD
would be
Gale of
so
Darkness.
nice. That would be so good.
Yeah.
Like a double pack, just getting both of those. It would be
Yep.
so good. But yeah,
Like,
even
yeah.
just
I
like a
mean,
remaster, like a remake of that would be so insane. But definitely very
exactly.
much in like the dreams and wishes type of category. Not really
Yeah.
that realistic. Unfortunately, because I would love to play it, because I always heard like really good things about it and never had a good chance to play XD Gale of Darkness. I'd love that, but
But see,
yeah.
the sad thing about Gale of Darkness and Colosseum, both those games, is that realistically their sales were actually not that good. Like
Yeah,
if
I
you
believe
actually look
that.
at how
Yeah.
those games did, and keep in mind they were GameCube games, so that already kind of nerfed them.
Yeah,
Because
GameCube in general was one of those systems that
yeah,
didn't like really do that well for Nintendo.
no,
So
and
yeah.
and that's kind of where like it really ruined the potential of these games. These games could have been like the actual future of Pokemon, but they weren't because well
Yeah, it does make you
they
kind of
they
wonder, like in a timeline, if those
worse time
sold like
frame.
really well, do you think like new
Yeah.
generations would have just started coming out on consoles then? Like it would have been
I
interesting to
think
think about.
if Colosseum had done really well, I think so. But at the end of the
Maybe,
day,
yeah.
it was released on a relatively dead console. I'm not trying to shit on the GameCube because it was a good console, but it
Yeah.
just didn't sell that well. And it was like it's the first time they did 3D, and it wasn't even Game Freak making it. It was a Genius Sonority, right? So they were working
Yeah.
on it instead.
Yep.
But I feel like it's a weird thing, but I feel like you know the only two things I can imagine, and I don't really know what other spin-offs there even are that they can do. Of course, they can introduce brand new stuff, right? Because keep in mind, we have had like Pokemon Sleep, we've had Masters EX, Pokemon Unite. Like there has
Yeah,
been some
a lot of those are
weird
kind of
ones.
like mobile stuff too, but that's
Yeah,
also another thing.
exactly.
is we can't even joke about Pokemon Sleep anymore because that already got announced. Like there's a lot of those types of things like we
Yep.
would say like in Pokemon Presents like predictions videos we'd make in the past. We'd be like, oh, maybe it's time we'll finally see Pokemon Sleep, or where's that
Yep.
Detective
True.
Pikachu 2 game? But now both of those are out. Like we can't even joke about that anymore. So it's
No,
really
true, true,
like
true. Exactly.
it's
Because
really
that's
like
the thing.
what can we even talk about now for like what they could show? Like this is
That's
genuinely
the
going to be
thing.
one of the most surprising Pokemon Presents. It's going to be crazy.
That's the thing. That's why I'm so excited to see what we will actually get, because we have literally like this is why I was telling you before we started recording that like this is the most like this is the most mysterious, confusing like
Yeah,
presents we will
it
ever
really
have,
is.
because
Yeah.
we have no context. Like we have nothing going into this. Even leakers having given like even someone like Riddler Coup, as much as he has been putting riddles out and stuff, they've still been very kind of
Mysterious, yeah, vague. Like they're
mysterious,
not
very
concrete. Yeah.
vague. Yeah,
Like
like they
we don't
they
know
just
like
haven't really
we
said
still
much.
don't know definitively if he's talking about Unova or Johto. Like we don't know.
That's true. Yeah, we don't even know
Exactly.
that,
So
which
it's
which
going to
makes
be
things
interesting.
even worse.
Yeah, I
Oh,
have no
jeez.
idea. All I know is next week there's going to be people upset for no reason. There's always people angry and complaining.
Yep,
So we're
that's true.
always going to see that. That's the one thing that's given no matter what. But yeah, I think let's talk a little bit about another possibility that I think it's a little more unlikely, but I have seen some people talking about it. I just want to get your thoughts on it. How would you feel
Yep.
if we get no game, but instead they somehow, once again, I don't feel like this is going to happen, but they announce another set of DLC for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet? Have you considered that at all?
Yes, so I initially like when people were suggesting that, I was like, nah, come on, like it's unrealistic, right?
Hmm.
But I actually thought about that, and I was like, yeah, actually, you know what? It could actually make sense. You know, it could work, but I
I
don't
don't know
know.
exactly like what they could do, but also like I feel like it wouldn't really surprise me either if they did it. I would be like, okay, I mean, I didn't really expect that, but at the same time, I don't think it's like an impossibility either. I just feel like it's a little hard to think because they had the epilogue, so it's like if you have more content after an epilogue, it seems a little confusing because
Yeah.
that's supposed
So
to
see,
be like
that's the part that like kills any potential of another DLC, is
yeah,
the fact
I
that it
feel
was
like if
called
the
an
epilogue
epilogue.
didn't come out,
Yeah.
because the epilogue seemed to be like the nice bow to like wrap up everything with Gen 9 with like Scarlet and
Yeah.
Violet. You had
Exactly.
all your friends come back. You had Nimona and Arvin and all of them. So that to me seemed like okay, this is the end of Generation 9. We're putting the bow on it there. So that's why I don't think there would be more DLC. But I don't know. Who knows? And I guess we really have no idea what they could be planning there. But I mean, otherwise, I think there's probably going to be updates. We're going to get to existing stuff. Like, we're probably going to see new stuff for Pokemon Unite and things like that. I'm sure you agree with as well.
Oh, 100%. Like the standard thing, and I always do the joke, you know what I mean? Like, hello, I am Ishihara from the Pokemon Company. And then it's like, you know, they casually like, please watch this. And then he just shows us like, you know, like the trailers
Cafe
for like
Remix.
stuff we already know. Yeah, Cafe Remix, like,
Yeah.
oh, hey
Deluxe or
guys, you know,
whatever.
like 3 new Pokemon in Cafe Remix and 5 new puzzles. But
Yeah.
it's like, obviously, like the whole, like, we know it's going to be 25 minutes long. For that 25 minutes, let's be real, about 20 plus minutes of that is going to be just them talking
Yeah, it's not
about
going to be anything
previous stuff.
exciting. The
Right,
big
like I'm
announcement will
guessing,
be the last, like, 5 minutes, if anything.
yeah, like we're easily gonna spend 3 minutes to 4 minutes just on them talking about where the next Pokemon Worlds is gonna take place. You know, like
Yeah, yeah, stuff like that,
championship's
too.
gonna take place. Yeah, so that's like they're gonna spend a decent amount of time on just something like that. Then on top of that, you also have like you know, Unite needs to get an announcement, like because now we also have Pokemon Sleep, so they also have to like do something about
Yeah,
that too,
there's
right?
rumors about that, too. Like, a new Pokemon, like, Snorlax thing was going to happen or something for that game. So,
Yeah, yeah,
lots of
yeah,
stuff
yeah.
happening there. So, yeah, I think we talked about, okay, so we talked about the main series game that could possibly get announced. We talked about the idea of maybe there could be more DLC somehow. We talked about Pokemon Generation 10. I'm trying to think of like other possibilities. Here's the one that comes to my mind. So another one is people have talked about. We talked about this last year too, I think, or like last time we had like a predictions was they announced that of course there's going to be virtual console like games coming to the Nintendo Switch Online, and of course the door is open for Game Boy and Game Boy Advance, which makes people want to see Pokemon Red and Blue, Yellow, Gold, Silver, Crystal, and then having Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, maybe even Fire Red and Leaf Green on the Nintendo Switch Online, or just even so like that they're re-released on the eShop or something and people can download them. What do you think about that? Do you think that that could possibly happen?
So yeah, but the thing is, every time we think that's gonna happen, it doesn't happen.
Yeah,
But there
you're
is a
right.
high chance this time around it could happen, because if I'm not mistaken, I think when they did the virtual consoles for was it like red blue green yellow, sorry, red blue yellow gold silver crystal,
Yeah.
they did it that at the tail end of the 3DS's life cycle, which was
Yeah, it was
super
at the
weird.
very end. Yeah, it was like
Yeah, it was right at the end.
2016, 2017, I think,
Yeah.
for Crystal.
So,
So yeah.
and given the fact that they have a actual Game Boy Advanced emulator that's been put into, like, into the Nintendo Switch Online thingy,
Yeah.
is like, why
And we are at
not
the end of the
again?
generation. We're at the end of the Switch's life, just like we were when the 3DS was when those came out.
Exactly.
So
Yeah. So that's where I'm like feeling like, maybe it's about time. Maybe they will do it just because it's the tail end. Because I feel like the reason, and this might sound weird, but I think the reason that they don't re-release those games is, and it's going to sound really weird, but I think it's because of cluttering up the Pokemon name leading into a new, like, into like the mainline. Because like basically, like, if they release re-release gold, silver, crystal, red, blue, yellow, whatever, right? Or even ruby, emerald, sapphire. Of course,
well, I'm
that's
sure
going
I'm
to
sure it would be done
generally.
in like waves. Like you would just get red and
Oh
blue
yeah, sure,
first, and
sure.
then
But like, what I think, what feel like is the issue is that it like, to them, it might take away from the other mainline actual things that they're doing, like an actual new game. You know what I mean?
I
Where it
guess
like
so.
might
Yeah,
just gonna be kind of like be in the way of sorts, right?
maybe.
Because I don't
Yeah.
remember like virtual, like the virtual console red and blue Pokemon. Like, I don't remember when those released exactly, but I think they came
It
out
was
around,
2016 somewhere in there. I don't know exactly like what
like, I
day,
think I've got
but
like here virtual console Pokemon. Let's see. So like, I'm not exactly sure the exact time when they came out. Like, let's see, 3DS. So they announced red, blue. Okay, so red, green, blue, and so red and green were announced in 2016 for the virtual console release, right?
mhm.
And then blue was in the same time. So they all came out in 2016, and then gold and silver and then crystal were in 2017 and 2018 respectively, right? Again, that's very much the tail end of the lifespan of, like, by the point of 2017, when they released the gold and silver
The
virtual
Switch was
console,
already out. Yeah.
the Switch was already out, right? And
Yeah.
Pokemon was just like releasing, Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Moon when Pokemon Yellow and Gold and Silver came out. So
Yeah.
it might be the right time now to like decide to be like, hey, fuck it, let's put them out. They could do it, but I don't know if they will. I don't know why they wouldn't, because it's just a free money at that point. Like, honestly,
Yeah, exactly. I
it
feel
literally
like
is free
most
money.
people would just be very happy to play those games
Yeah.
like officially still on their.
Yeah, I mean, there's a high chance. There is a high chance this time around it could happen. I feel like I've seen a lot of people talking about it. I've seen a lot of people mentioning it. Of course,
Especially because
people
this year
speaking
seems
about
to
it.
be like that like random year where we have no idea what could happen. It seems like the perfect year
Exactly.
now
Yep.
to be like, here's the one where we give you those
Oh
games
yeah.
finally.
I mean,
So
it would be fitting right now. It would be a fitting time to do it. But at the end of the day, we are talking about Game Freak and Nintendo here, and they have a weird tendency to just kind of withhold stuff for some reason, like withhold games. And when they do like, remasters, whatever, of games, it's like usually doesn't always end up looking the best. It's kind of ends up being shitty.
mhm.
Like, I don't know if you've noticed it, but like, I don't remember like which one it was, but like the whole Mario collection they did a while back, like people had a lot of
Oh, the
criticism why
3D
they.
the 3D Mario collection.
Yes, and like people had complaints about that, but then there was also the
Yeah.
fact that like they made it like limited time release, which is
Yeah,
super
yeah. It was only
weird. Like,
available for like a few months.
yeah, so like this is weird thing with them where like it's like, I don't know what it is, but like they just don't want to give access to any of that old stuff, which again, I don't get it. I don't understand the logic behind it. It doesn't really make sense, but that's just how they are, and I guess we just have to accept how they
Yeah.
are. But I feel like Pokemon could have a high chance. I think there is a chance that tomorrow, well, not tomorrow, but like, on
Next
Pokemon Day, we
week.
might actually see that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we talked about the new generation. We talked about the possibility of Johto Unova. We talked about DLC. We talked
Yep.
about spin-off games. We talked about virtual console. I think that's about it. I mean, we even talked about the mobile games getting updates. I think that's pretty much it. I mean, unless do you have any other like last couple of predictions and things you want to discuss, or
I'm just trying to think, like, what else is there really? Because like,
because I think most of the big
realistically, I
points
think
I
we've
think
gone
we
through
already
most of it. Yeah.
hit. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the only other thing is like in terms of actual leaks and stuff, what they have been saying.
Yeah.
Because I think the only thing that I've seen in terms of actual like stuff that you can kind of trust because of the person who posted it, which is Ridley Koo. I think the only thing I've seen was him like making that tweet with like 4 different regions, and I don't know if you
Oh
you
yeah, I
can
know.
maybe
I know
edit
that
this
one.
into the
Yeah.
video. Yeah, so for context, for anybody who doesn't know,
I'll put it
Riddler
up on
Crew's
the
a
screen
legit,
for you
like,
guys that are watching.
awesome.
But yeah.
So Riddler Crew is an actual leaker. He does have info, but he's like a Riddler, so he doesn't actually give us info in a concrete way. He just kind of riddles it. However, he tweeted out this picture a while back where he had like kind of like a laughing emoji, like, I wonder where we're going, and then it was like 4 different regions included. And I think
Yeah,
he just said
I think he titled it like
2024.
2024 prediction or
Exactly.
something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
2024 prediction. And then he had 4 different images with 4 regions in them. And the first image, I think first image was Johto and Kanto. Then it was Unova. And then finally it was a picture of Mesagosa from Paldea, right? Like the city,
Yeah.
the school, like with the big Pokeball. And that's where I was thinking to myself, like, wait a minute. And the moment that they announced the epilogue, I realized, holy shit, this has got to be where we're going for the next games as well. Because for those 4 pictures, if you look at the Paldea one, you might be thinking, oh, does this mean a new DLC? No, because we already got that. That was the epilogue. The epilogue was essentially like a third DLC or a part 3.
And it did come out.
That
It did
was
come out
like
in 2024, so he was
exactly.
right.
It came out.
Yeah.
So he was right. He came out in 2024. So you can already, from those 4 images, you can already remove that one, which means we still have 3 left, which is Kanto, Johto, Unova. The obvious 2 there are Kanto and Johto, because those 2 are always together whenever it's a Johto game. Like those 2
Yeah.
together would confirm some kind of Johto game. And then the Unova one would confirm a Unova game. The problem, though, is that he's been nonstop pushing this now, like, not really saying it, but he's been kind of like jabbing at it or making fun of the idea of like a kind of experimental merged game of Johto and Unova together, which I don't think that's gonna happen. But anything is possible.
That seems too
it's too far-fetched.
Fan speculation, in my opinion.
Too fan fiction-y.
Because I've seen some people saying that too, like, oh, what if it's gonna be a fusion? Like we got Pokemon Black Gold and White Silver. Like I don't think we're gonna get like something like that. But since you did mention this, I did want to talk real quick. So the video where they announced this Pokemon Presents actually has Gen 1 music playing, and then they have a Pikachu walking on screen. So a lot of times these like little teaser videos for the Presents do have something to do with what gets announced. Like that one that we flipped out over like the last time, it was like it got all purple and neon like the logo, and then it got like lightning and stuff, and that was just for a Mewtwo raid, I'm pretty sure it ended up being. But like they do have some type of significance, usually like the whatever the teaser video for the Presents is. So do you think that Gen 1 music or the Pikachu could be referring to anything potentially, or do you think it's just because it's Pokemon?
Oh geez, I don't know. I'm not sure.
Because the thing is, it's weird. Because like if it's Gen 1 music, it's like, well, what could they do with Gen 1? Like I don't see them doing like a new Gen 1 game.
That's the thing. I think that specific music, I think the actual music that's used, the song that's being used in that case, again, people can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think that music that's being used in that case was literally, it was literally like the music that's used at the end of like Pokemon, like of Kanto, of like the Indigo League. Like I think it's like,
I think it was like the credits theme or something, right?
Yeah, the credits theme. Like so it's like at the tail end of that. Which what happens after like after Kanto, you'd logically like Ash or someone would go to Johto. So like people were like thinking like that could mean something. Of course, it could mean nothing. It could have like zero meaning.
Yeah, I'm just saying it because usually like in the past, like those types of little teases do end up having some type of significance. Because like that purple one actually did end up being a Mewtwo raid, which was the teaser made sense. I'm just trying to think here, like what could the Kanto music be hinting at? But it could also not be for a mainline game. Like it could just be teasing some type of Kanto event happening in Pokemon Sleep or some shit like that. So it doesn't have to be.
It could be, but oh geez, man, a Kanto game would be. Oof.
No, I don't think it's Kanto game. A Kanto game would be so weird because we already have one on the Switch. So like, why would they do 2 Kanto games on the Switch? Unless, of course, it's Johto, because you can't have a Johto game without having Kanto as the post game. But a standalone Kanto game, I don't think so at all. Unless it could also be teasing, like we talked about earlier, the original games coming to Virtual Console or like on the eShop. If it's teasing that, like original Red and Blue coming to Switch Online.
That's what it could be doing. I think that's more so what it could be doing. I think that's the better direction to kind of look at it at. I think that's more.
If there's any significance, I feel like that's more likely what it is.
Yeah. Big true on that one. Yeah.
All right, well, I think we pretty much hit all the topics. I mean, this is going to be almost an hour-long video, so thank you guys for anybody who stuck around to watch all of this. I mean, like I said, it's mostly just kind of like a podcasty video. I will have some stuff like that we're talking about, like playing in the background, but not really anything crazy, more of those just that type of video where you click and kind of tab out and listen. But yeah, I mean, either way, this Pokemon Presents, I think, is going to be one of the most mysterious, exciting, and kind of concerning, I would say, to go into. It's going to be very crazy. Like, we're going to come out of this and we're going to be like, dude, what did we just see? Or like, wow, that was insane, or whatever. Like, it's going to be interesting to see what goes down next week. But yeah, I am looking forward to it because at the end of the day, it's still Pokemon. I love Pokemon, so we're gonna see what they still have in store for the Switch and what we could see coming this year potentially and what their future plans are. So it's always an exciting time. But
Yep.
yeah, I mean, so thank you guys all so much for who did watch through the video. I do really appreciate it. And then also Ruffle, thank you so much for coming through. I do appreciate it. I know it takes time out of your day and it's a little annoying, I'm sure, for you to have to come on to, but I do appreciate it, man.
It's all right, man. I'm just glad to be on, dude. I like talking to you, and I like doing these like types of videos, so I enjoy it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm always free to, if I can, to come through on your videos too, if you ever want to. So, just send me a message. I'm always down, because it's always fun. I feel like having these types of videos with a friend is always more fun to discuss than just like you talking by yourself about what you think.
That is true. Yep, that is very true.
But yeah, so let people know where people can find you, because I'll definitely have your stuff linked below for them to go and check out your channel.
Well, as per usual, on YouTube, Ruffle Rallets. That's just the name, not much else. You can find me on Twitter too if you want to, but I'm not really doing much there. It's mostly just YouTube videos all about Pokemon. So yeah, you can find me there.
All right, good stuff. Yeah. All right, so that is going to do it, everybody. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Be sure to comment your predictions down below for what you think is going to be shown inside of this Pokemon Presents. What would you guys really like to see? What are your hopes and wishes for like stuff that you really think is not going to happen, but you would love to see as well? I'm definitely interested to see what you guys have to say about it as well. Be sure to click the like button, subscribe to the channel, all that good stuff. And yeah, I will catch you guys all in the next video, all right? You guys all have yourselves a good one, all right? Thank you for watching.